And there's going to be an evolution, regardless of what we do, inside of Cuba. Partly it's going to be generational. If you listened to President Castro's comments earlier this morning, a lot of the points he made referenced actions that took place before I was born, and part of my message here is the Cold War is over. There's still a whole lot of challenges that we face and a lot of issues around the world. And we're still going to have serious issues with Cuba on not just the Cuban government's approach to its own people, but also regional issues and concerns. There are going to be areas where we cooperate as well. Cuban doctors deployed during the Ebola crisis made a difference. Cuban activity in Haiti in the wake of the earthquake made a difference. And so there may be areas of collaboration as well. What I said to President Castro is the same thing that I've said to leaders throughout the region. We have a point of view and we won't be shy about expressing it. But I'm confident that the way to lift up the values that we care about is through persuasion. And that's going to be the primary approach that we take on a whole host of these. Issues primarily because they don't implicate our national security in a direct way. And I think that we have to be very clear if Cuba is not a threat to the United States. That doesn't mean we don't have differences with it. But on the list of threats that I'm concerned about, I think it's fair to say that between ISIL and Iran getting a nuclear weapon, and activities in Yemen and Libya, and Boko Haram, Russian aggression in Ukraine and the impact on our allies there. I could go down a pretty long list. Climate change. So I think our approach has to be one of trying to work with the region and other countries. And be very clear about what we believe and what we stand for, and what we think works and what doesn't. And so often, when we insert ourselves in ways that go beyond persuasion, it's counterproductive. It backfires. That's been part of our history, which is why countries keep on trying to use us as an excuse. For their own governance failures. Let's take away the excuse. And let's be clear that we're prepared to partner. And engage with everybody to try to lift up opportunity and prosperity and security for people in the region. Major Garrett. Question, good afternoon, Mr. President. Allow me, if you will, to quote the Supreme Leader directly. President Obama, yes. Question, the United States' activity since the announcement of the framework has been deceptive. It is lying, it is devilish. And on two particular points, he said direct quotes, Iran's military sites cannot be inspected. Under the excuse of nuclear supervision, and all sanctions should be removed when the deal is signed. Is it your opinion, Mr. President, that this is pure posturing and it should be disregarded? By your government and by you and your Secretary of State? And if so, could you help me understand to whom the Supreme Leader would be posturing? Because under my limited understanding of Iranian politics, that's not a job description usually applied to the supreme leader. President Obama, that was a well-crafted question, Major. And let me just suggest that even a guy with the title Supreme leader has to be concerned about his own constituencies. And the issue is not whether I have to take his word for whether that's his understanding. Because we've got work until the end of June to see if we've got a document that works. And if that is his understanding and his position, in ways that can't be squared with our concern about being able to embark on vigorous inspections to assure that Iran isn't cheating under any program. And that we don't have the capacity to snap back sanctions when we see a potential violation, then we're probably not going to get a deal. So part of the concern that I have in this debate here, Major, is I don't understand why it is that everybody is working so hard to anticipate failure. The opponents of the deal don't seem to be focused on how do we get to a good deal as much as they're focused on how can we show that it's not possible to get a good deal. And my simple point is let's wait and see what the deal is, and we'll be able to look. And if, in fact, we're not satisfied that it cuts off the pathways for Iran obtaining a nuclear weapon, then we won't sign it. If, on the other hand, it does, then I will strongly argue, and I believe the American people will. Support, and the international community will support, that it's far preferable to the other alternatives. Now, Major, it's not going to be perfect, in the sense that if you ask Prime Minister Netanyahu or some members of the Republican caucus, or even some Democrats, if you ask me, would I prefer that Iran never had, never did have, will never have even a single nut? Bolt, anything related to nuclear power, don't have any nuclear scientists. Don't have any capacity to develop it, that would be great. But that's not possible. That's not achievable. That's not achievable through sanctions, it's not achievable through military means. They're going to have some form of peaceful nuclear power, and that will then pose a challenge for the international community. Which is why the political agreement calls for unprecedented framework of inspections that allows us to assure that it's not being used or diverted in ways that could be weaponized. But we're going to have to see whether or not we can get a deal or not. My only question is why we keep on trying to short-circuit the actual negotiations. Nobody is we're. Not disarming. We're not getting rid of our nuclear weapons. We're not getting rid of our navy. We're not giving anything up. We are simply waiting to see what it is that the negotiators come up with. And if, in fact, we are able to come up with something that works, then we'll know. And with respect to the Supreme Leader, yes, it's a pretty important title. It seems a little more clear-cut than President. On the other hand, there may be ways of structuring a final deal that satisfy their pride. Their optics, their politics, but meet our core practical objectives. And that's what we've got to give the negotiators room to determine. Last question. Karen D. Young. Where's Karen? There she is. Question. And I wonder how, within that framework that's already been agreed. How we can come up with something that satisfies the kinds of concerns that he raised. No inspection of military sites. Immediate lifting of all sanctions the day that the thing is signed. And also on Cuba, I wanted to ask, as you discuss the state sponsor of terrorism list with President Castro. The Cubans have raised some issues about the 45-day waiting period. I wondered if that came up. I know that your government is eager. Assuming that the recommendation is approved is to remove it and is approved by you, that we move ahead quickly with embassies. The Cubans have raised concerns about that 45 days and how something could go wrong in those 45 days. And it really doesn't give them access to the kinds of things they think they can. Have once they're if and when they're removed from the list. Did that come up? And is it your belief that once they're removed from the list, then there is no impediment to go ahead with opening embassies, once you approve their removal from the list? President Obama, okay. So I'll make one last run at Iran here. There's a political framework, the outlines of which were established between Iran and the P5+1. In some cases, there was great specificity around, For example, the reductions that need to take place in the number of centrifuges in Natanz. Or the conversion of Fordow into a facility that does not permit the potential production of weapons-grade uranium. And in other cases, there was language of intent, but the details matter. And how those details are interpreted are going to be subject to negotiation. So it's not accurate to suggest that, and I don't think my team has ever suggested. That somehow everything is all done and it's just a matter of writing it up. This is a situation in which we have a framework that is, if implemented, powerful. And will achieve our goal of making sure that Iran doesn't have a nuclear weapon. But the details make a big difference, how they're structured. And I guarantee you there will be some tough negotiations around that. And that's what I said the first day when we announced that we had an agreement. And that's what we've continued to say. So there's really no contradiction here. And keep in mind that when we started this process off, even with the interim agreement, when we signed the JPOA way back at the beginning of this whole thing, there was a similar back and forth in terms of interpretation of how this was going to be implemented. And the Iranians were saying that's not true, and we were saying this. But once we actually got through negotiations, it turned out that we had something that was substantial. That was subject to review by everybody involved, and that has proven to be highly effective. even by the assessments of critics of the policy like the Israelis.